Hey guys, tonight we step into the soft, golden morning haze of the Maya highlands. The air smells faintly of wet earth and roasted maize, and there's a low murmur of bird calls from the trees outside your thatched hut. You lie curled on a mat made of woven reeds, the fibers pressing gentle ridges into your cheek, as the first rays of sunlight slide through the open slats of your home. Somewhere nearby, the familiar clatter of grinding stones begins. Your neighbor is already making breakfast. Time to get up, you shuffle upright and stretch, and the joints in your back respond with a series of deeply unconvincing creaks. No alarm clocks here, your internal rhythm is set by the stars and the shifting sun. The hearth crackles to life as your grandmother tends the coals, muttering softly in kitsch. She's already separated the day's counting stones, setting them in a bowl beside the fire. You'll need them soon enough, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and hey, tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is there. Always love knowing how far this sleepy tribe of ours has spread. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your day the same way your ancestors have for generations, with quiet observation. The Maya world is full of patterns, numbers, rhythms. Even now, as you gaze across the valley from your doorstep, you can see evidence of it, the terraced hillsides meticulously aligned to match both function and form, the irrigation channels bending like rivers drawn on a codex page. You are part of a society that sees numbers in everything. Your village sits high on a ridge in what will one day be called Guatemala. Thick mist still clings to the forests below, and for a moment, it looks like the trees are growing out of clouds. Not a bad way to start the day. You help your younger cousin sweep the courtyard, tracing wide circles in the dirt that make your grandmother cluck. Numbers must be drawn precisely, even when you're just making tidy spirals in the dust. Later, you join a few others around the fire. Today's lesson is a simple one: how to count to 400 using only your fingers, your toes, and some clever imagination. You wiggle your digits dramatically, making the smaller kids laugh, but there's method behind this wiggling madness. Your people use a vigesimal system, that's base 20, for the sleepyheads among us. While many civilizations built their counting systems on tens, thank your fingers, the Maya said, why not throw in toes too? So they did. 1 dot equals 1. A bar equals 5. And a shell-like symbol? That's 0. We'll get to that little miracle in the next section, but for now, you practice forming numbers with pebbles and beans on a mat of woven palm. You arrange 3 dots above one bar. That's 8. Add another bar below it and a dot, suddenly you're at 13. It's tactile, it's visual, and weirdly satisfying, like ancient spreadsheet therapy. As the sun climbs higher, the village becomes a patchwork of activity. Some are already off hauling maize or clay, while others chant beside the temple steps, their voices rising like steam. You pass by a young scribe, hunched under a palm awning. He's scratching numbers onto a strip of amati bark with a sharpened quill. He's trying to calculate the days between now and a solar eclipse forecasted months away. He doesn't even look up as you walk by, but you toss him a tamale anyway. Mathematicians, right? Along the trail, you encounter a stone marker. It's ancient, probably older than your grandfather's grandfather, but the numbers on it are clean and sharp. Carved long ago, it records the date of a great harvest. The dots and bars still speak. You crouch to trace one of them with your fingertip, the coolness of the stone against your skin. You wonder if someone, hundreds of years from now, will do the same to something you leave behind. Mainstream historians often focus on the Maya's astronomical genius, their calendars, their temples aligned with equinoxes, but what's easy to miss is how deeply their daily lives revolved around mathematics. It wasn't just for priests or kings. Everyone used it. Farmers calculated rainfall cycles. Traders kept running tallies in their heads. And yes, even kids like you had to memorize the shapes and meanings of obscure glyphs while pretending to listen during lessons. Of course, not everything is perfectly understood today. Historians still argue whether average Maya villagers, like you, used the long count calendar system regularly, or if that was mostly the realm of elite scribes and ritual specialists. Either way, numbers shape the flow of your day more than you probably realize. By late morning, the sun's heat is already thick. You retreat to a shady patch beneath a ceiba tree and sip water flavored with crushed cacao beans. There's a quiet rhythm here. Your thoughts drift lazily. You begin to imagine numbers not just as tools, but as companions, symbols with personalities. You joke to yourself that 5 is stubborn, 13 is always late, and 20 thinks it's the center of the universe. A soft breeze stirs the leaves above, and somewhere far off, you hear the conch shell call of a priest announcing the midday ritual. Soon, you'll gather with the others at the plaza, where incense will rise in curls, and prayers will mix with poetry and numbers whispered like magic spells. But for now, you sit cross-legged, watching ants march in perfect rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. You start to count them, because, of course you do. You don't need a sundial to know it's time to clean up. The heat sharpens, the light thickens, and your grandmother has given you that look, the one that says, "Stop counting ants and go wash your face." You grab your gourd bowl and make your way toward the river, barefoot across warm dirt paths. The grass tickles your ankles and a distant frog calls out what sounds suspiciously like your name. It probably isn't, but you wave back anyway. The river isn't far, just past the squash fields and a small shrine with a sun glyph carved into its side. You pause to place a palm leaf offering there. Not because you're particularly devout, but because the last time you skipped it, you fell face first into a patch of fire ants. Coincidence? Maybe. But you're not taking chances today. At the riverbank, women kneel, scrubbing clothes on smooth stones. Children splash further down, and one enthusiastic uncle tries to teach a chicken to swim. It is not going well. You find your usual spot, half shaded, near the roots of a tree, and dip your bowl. The water's cool, a little cloudy, and has that faint earthy flavor of silt and maybe yesterday's upstream fish party. But it's your daily ritual, part necessity, part refreshment, part spiritual reset. You begin by scooping sand from the riverbed, rubbing it gently across your skin. It's the ancient Maya version of exfoliating. Not glamorous, but surprisingly effective. Granules work their way under your fingernails as you scrub your arms, legs, and face. Clean is a relative term, but you feel better, gritty in a good way. Next, you rinse. The water rushes over you, carrying away dust, sleep, and the odd mosquito. A fish brushes against your ankle and you yelp, drawing laughter from 2 girls nearby. You respond with a very mature splash, and suddenly it's a full-blown water battle, featuring squeals, slippery rocks, and one soggy chicken that's made a break for freedom. After a while, things calm again. You sit at the river's edge, dripping dry in the sun. This quiet moment, just you, the water, and the smell of damp leaves, is the true heart of your morning. Hygiene isn't just about staying clean. It's about preparing your body and mind for another day inside a world ruled by both order and chaos. Your thoughts wander, as they tend to do here. You trace a line of algae on a nearby stone and think of numbers again. The way they slip into everything. The number of times you must stir maize flour for tortillas. The rhythmic claps of women shaping dough. The angles of the plaza's corners, carefully calculated to greet solstice sunrises. Even the water, with its cycles and flows, seems to carry mathematics in its current. Mainstream historical records often highlight Maya achievements in architecture and astronomy. But hygiene, especially river routines like this, played a subtle, vital role. Cleanliness wasn't just practical, it was sacred. Bathing connected you with nature, with the gods, and with the cyclical rhythms of time. It's debated how often Maya people bathed. Some scholars argue it was a daily ritual for most villagers, tied to religious cleansing and comfort in a hot climate. Others suggest it was less frequent, more ceremonial. Either way, no one denies that the river was a lifeline, and in your case, also a classroom. Because here, with wet hair plastered to your forehead, you listen. To the chatter of women sharing stories and proverbs. To the boys arguing over who gets to eat the last roasted lizard. To the old man nearby, describing with absolute seriousness how the god Chak once flooded the world because a turtle wouldn't stop dancing. Fringe beliefs? Maybe. But in your world, where storms roar without warning and maize sometimes sprouts sideways, these stories make as much sense as any number. The breeze shifts, and you smell smoke. Breakfast time. You rise, brush river sand from your knees, and begin the walk home. Your skin feels new, like it's humming just under the surface. The mud squishes slightly between your toes, and you take deliberate steps, enjoying the soft squelch. It's strangely satisfying. As you pass the shrine again, you pause. The sun glyph glows faintly in the shifting light. You mutter a thank you to the gods, for water, for math, for mornings that start with laughter and not snakes. Back at your home, steam rises from the hearth. Your grandmother is flipping tortillas, and the scent makes your stomach growl so loud even the dog looks at you with concern. You sit cross-legged near the fire. A bowl of thick maize porridge awaits you, topped with honey and sliced squash. You eat slowly, letting the warmth settle inside you. It's simple food, but nourishing. And, bonus, your uncle is too distracted lecturing someone about the correct number of bean pods per serving to notice you sneak the last scoop of honey. By the time you finish, the sun is well into its climb, casting sharp shadows. Your hair is mostly dry, and your skin smells faintly of river and roasted corn. You feel grounded, reset, ready, and just in time, too, because your father's already shouting that the market delivery needs counting, and someone needs to help him triple-check the cocoa inventory. Guess who that someone is? You roll your eyes, grab your counting stones, and head out the door. The first thing you do before tackling the cocoa inventory is grab the counting stones, your trusty, slightly lopsided set of pebbles, each carefully chosen to feel right in your hand. One has a notch that fits your thumb perfectly. Another looks suspiciously like a small turtle. You've named it Turtless. He's very good at representing the number 5. You sit cross-legged in the storeroom, which smells gloriously of fermented cacao, dried chilies, and something, possibly deceased. Probably a leftover squash. You nudge it aside with your foot, politely ignoring its contributions to the aromatic profile. The sacks of cocoa are stacked neatly in rows, tied with woven fiber cords. Your job is simple in theory: count how many there are, double-check for mold or moisture, and make sure nothing's been nibbled by rodents or sneaky uncles. The counting part, at least, is satisfying. You start laying out stones on the floor, bar, converting sacks into symbols, each group of 20 wrapped up in a pleasing little cluster. Your base 20 system makes this process smooth, rhythmic. You hum softly as you work, occasionally pausing to swat away a nosy beetle. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a strange thought emerges: 0. The Maya concept of 0 isn't just a placeholder. It's a fully formed number, depicted with a shell symbol that you once thought looked like a very sleepy eye. You first learned it while scratching numbers in the dirt, and it blew your young mind. Nothingness, as a something wild, and long before Europe caught on, your people were already using 0 to track calendar cycles, business records, and astronomical data. In fact, one of your favorite temple carvings has a long count date with 3 big fat zeros lined up right in the middle. You like to imagine the scribe who carved it thinking, this'll really confuse the future. There's an argument, of course there is, about whether 0 originated in Mesoamerica independently or was influenced by contact with other mathematical systems. Historians still debate it. But sitting here, laying down your turtle-shaped pebble and smiling to yourself, you know what your village believes: the gods whispered it to us in a dream. 0 isn't just theoretical to you. It's practical. If there are no beans in the pot, you're not having lunch. That's 0. If the rain doesn't fall in Tzaikin moon, your corn stays stunted. That's also 0. Emptiness isn't absence. It's presence, patiently waiting. You pause mid-count as your cousin darts into the storeroom, shouting. A jaguar took the stew pot. You blink. Again. Probably the same one, he pants. It's limping now. You sigh. Classic jungle drama. But stew pots can be remade. Cocoa, though. Cocoa needs accounting. You resume your count, there's a rhythm to it, set the stone, say the value aloud, tap the corresponding sack. You find yourself in a meditative loop. Bar bar dot. 25. Bar dot dot dot. 28. You start to feel the math as much as think it. It's more than counting, it's communion. Your father pokes his head in just as you're finishing. How many? 83, you say. Plus one leaking. He grunts. We'll trade the leaky one to the weavers. They never check. He leaves, and you allow yourself a small, victorious grin. You've done good work, and Turtlus agrees. Your mind drifts again, this time to an old story the priest once told about the god at Samna. Apparently, he created numbers by spitting into his hands and clapping once, bam, and that sound became math. You're not sure how historically accurate that is, but it makes more sense than some of the things Menhotep the tax collector says. As you exit the storeroom, the sun has shifted again. The courtyard hums with activity, women weaving dyed threads into impossibly intricate patterns, boys chasing a chicken with a painted feather stuck to its head. It's a turkey now, elders chatting beneath the shade of a jacaranda tree. You step carefully through it all, numbers still tumbling through your head. There's a calm in knowing that your ancestors and your descendants will count the same way, bars and dots, base, 20, 0 and all, and that sense of continuity, of slipping quietly into a long, uninterrupted river of knowledge, is deeply comforting. You swing by the communal cooking fire, where someone's roasting squash seeds. They offer you a handful, and you eat them slowly as you walk. Each crunch feels like a beat in time. 1 2 3 crunch. 4 5 crunch. Later, you'll help the priest prepare an eclipse table, which, spoiler alert, involves a whole lot more dots and bars, and maybe even a number that ends in 4 zeros, which always feels dramatic. But for now, you're free. Inventory's done, your fingers smell like squash and river silt, and no one has asked you to carry anything heavy in at least 15 minutes. You flop down under a fig tree and lie there, letting the warmth sink in. The leaves rustle overhead in a breeze that tastes faintly of cinnamon and dust. You look up at the sky. Cloudless and perfect, and think, if zero is the space between things, maybe this is one of those moments. A sacred pause. A blank symbol that makes the rest of your life readable. You're back on your feet again, this time following the path that curves gently past the granary and down toward the sacred plaza. The midday heat presses on your skin like a warm, wet blanket. You could nap in a patch of shade, sure, but instead you've been summoned by the priest. Something about needing extra hands and extra brains. Which sounds suspicious. But you like puzzles, and this one involves stars. The plaza buzzes with quiet anticipation. A few elders sit in semicircles under woven mats, nodding off mid-prayer. A trio of boys chase each other through the maze of stone columns, pretending to be Venus and Mars in dramatic pursuit. You nearly trip over one and receive an apology shouted in perfectly rehearsed glyphs. Near the temple steps, the high priest stands beside an immense bark paper codex spread open on a painted table. The pages ripple slightly in the breeze, covered with glyphs, dots, bars, and intricate animal symbols. There's a faint smell of crushed flowers and soot, which means incense prep is underway too. You approach quietly, hands clasped, because that's what one does when summoned by someone wearing a full-feathered jaguar mask and holding a stick made entirely of bones and dignity. Ah, the priest says, removing his mask, revealing sweat-slicked brows and slightly crossed eyes. You can do math, yes? You nod. He nods back. Good. I need help aligning Venus. You blink. The actual planet? No, just the calendar. But if you can adjust the planet, feel free. You suppress a grin and lean in. The priest points to a series of glyphs. They represent Venus's heliacal rising, the first visible appearance of the planet before dawn. This event matters. It signals sacred rituals, agricultural seasons, and in some cities, slightly unfortunate warfare. The Maya track celestial movements with astonishing precision. In fact, the Venus table in the Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Maya books, records its cycles with mathematical accuracy that would make 16th-century European astronomers weep into their telescopes. Though your version of this table is simpler, scrawled with charcoal and annotated with what might be a doodle of a snake eating a drum, you work through the numbers. Venus's cycle is 584 days. That's 1 year, 219 days. The priest mutters, tapping a shell-shaped 0 on the page. It must match the last rising, or we insult Kukulkan. Right. Insulting a feathered serpent god? Not how you want to spend your afternoon. You begin recalculating the date of the last visible Venus rise. You use your counting stones, a notched stick, and a borrowed turkey feather as a pointer. It's like doing algebra with props. Fortunately, you're pretty good at it. As you double-check your work, a cool fact crosses your mind. The Maya used 3 overlapping calendars, the 260-day Tsokin, the 365-day Hab, and the long count, which tracks literally everything forever. Today, all 3 must align just right for this ritual. Historians still argue whether these calendars were used daily by average villagers or mostly in elite circles. But you don't really care. Right now, you're elbow-deep in sacred math, and it's oddly comforting. Nearby, someone sets down a bowl of tamales. You take one without looking, chew thoughtfully, and realize it's filled with some kind of spiced fruit. You're unsure whether it's an offering or lunch, but it's delicious either way. Numbers blur together as you work. The heat ripples off stone surfaces. Your sweat drips onto the page. You wipe it away carefully. This codex is one of a kind. Maybe. Unless the priest has 5 identical backups hidden in a cave somewhere. He's that kind of guy. Finally, you align the final date glyph. You check it twice. The priest leans in, squints, and gives a nod so subtle it might be gas. Acceptable, he says, high praise. You stand back as he begins to chant. The others nearby join in, their voices low and rhythmic. The codex glows slightly in the light, the glyphs catching the sun like polished obsidian. Incense smoke swirls into the air, looping through beams of sunlight like soft mathematics made visible. You're not a priest, not a scribe, not a noble. But you feel something sacred stir inside you. You just help the gods keep time. After the chant, the priest gives you a dried chili. You're not sure if it's a reward or a prank. But you take it with a bow. He waves you off. Go rest. Or count something. Whatever you people do. You wander through the plaza again, dizzy from numbers and smoke and the feeling that time itself just winked at you. By now, the sun is heading toward the treetops. Long shadows stretch across stone paths, and parrots scream their daily gossip into the treetops. You duck into the shade, sipping from a clay jar of maize drink, your fingers still twitching from tallying planetary positions. You think about the stars, how they seem random, scattered, chaotic. But your people don't see chaos. They see cycles. Patterns. Predictability dressed up as mystery, and that's where the comfort is. Isn't it? In knowing that the same Venus you just counted will return. The same sun will rise. The same gods will listen. Even if you mess up the math once in a while, you sit on a flat stone warmed by the day's sun, close your eyes, and feel the rhythm settling in your chest. You are part of this machine, this grand, ancient cosmic clock that ticks not with gears, but with glyphs, feathers, songs, and sweat. You trudge along a dusty path away from the plaza, the weight of the day's numbers still on your mind, when you come upon the construction site of one of the village's newest projects, a modest pyramid meant to honor the local deity. Not as grand as the royal pyramids of the kings, but a symbol of communal pride nonetheless. Today, you're enlisted to help move stones, and while your muscles protest, there's a strange comfort in the repetition of it all. you grip a rough-hewn block of limestone, its surface cool and speckled with fine grains that tell the tale of ancient seas. With every stone you carry, you feel connected to a lineage stretching back centuries, a sequence of rituals where each layer signifies more than just mud and mortar, it embodies numbers and fractions, measurements and proportions. The elders say that just as the gods measure time and space with perfect precision, every stone must fit into the pyramid like a note in a grand, silent symphony. In the midday heat, as you haul stones to the construction site, you notice the overseer, a wiry fellow with a mischievous glint in his eye, scribbling fractions on a small slate. He's trying to calculate the precise angle at which each stone needs to be placed to ensure the pyramid slopes evenly upward. Fractions, he mutters, are as essential as the gods themselves. You chuckle to yourself, imagine that. Divine fractions. It's as if the very concept of a half or a quarter could change the favor of the gods. And so, you join in the calculations in a way that feels more like a dance than labor. Every time you lift a stone, you recall the time you had to divide a loaf of maize cake using rough fractions, and how that simple division had once sparked a debate among neighbors. Today, that spirit of division and calculation comes alive again. The overseer explains that the slope of the pyramid must match the angle of the setting sun at the equinox. It's an odd requirement, one that some say is merely superstition, while others assert it's based on celestial measurements passed down from the gods. You think back to that discussion by the river, where you counted grains of maize and compared them to the dance of Venus in the sky. As you work, you feel the rhythm of the task echoing the rhythm of earlier counting activities, the same meticulous distribution of dots, bars, and zeros. Now, instead of tallying cocoa sacks or reciting celestial tables, you're breaking down heavy stones into manageable fractions. The overseer demonstrates, a stone might be divided in theory into 1/2, 1/3, or even 1/4 portions to visualize how these pieces come together to form a unified whole. And so you whisper the fractions under your breath as you push the stone onto a rough pile, your mind divided between the physical strain and the abstract poetry of mathematics, at one point, as you lift a particularly cumbersome block. You recall a moment from earlier in the day, the playful banter over counting stones that resembled tiny turtles. Today, that memory sparks a quiet smile despite the weight on your arms. The idea that numbers and fractions aren't merely intellectual constructs, but tangible elements in your daily work, connects you to a tradition that melds practicality with a celestial melody. The temple of your village has always stressed that numbers are not just tools for counting beans or planning harvests, they are sacred. Mainstream history holds that precise measurements and calculated ratios were the backbone of Maya architecture. The pyramid you help build is a testament to this legacy, a structure whose every angle might whisper secrets of equinox sunrises and long-forgotten rituals. And yet, amid these grand mathematical assertions, you recall a whimsical belief shared by the elders. Some say that if you hum a particular fraction backwards, the gods might smile upon you enough to lower the day's burdens. It sounds absurd, but in the languid haze of labor, such quirky ideas offer solace. The task is slow but purposeful. The overseer pauses to adjust his slate, squinting as he rechecks the numbers. Historians still argue whether these precise ratios were engineered by design or emerged naturally from our understanding of the land, he muses aloud. His tone suggests both respect for ancient wisdom and a gentle skepticism that lends a modern twist to age-old lore. You nod in silent agreement, feeling that same inner debate swirl as you push a stone along the narrow path, its shape rough but imperfectly perfect. Between breaths, you notice that the workers around you have fallen into a rhythm that is almost hypnotic. The sound of shifting stones, the gentle scraping against worn pathways, and the occasional clatter of a dropped tool become like a soft percussion background for your thoughts. You catch snippets of conversation, a jest about a stone that might have a secret curse, a light-hearted comparison of pyramid angles to the curve of a well-carved canoe, and even a reference to a tale of an ancient architect who once calculated the best fraction of time to start a journey. These interludes of light humor, sprinkled through the seriousness of labor, remind you that even in the midst of meticulous calculations, life retains its playful unpredictability. You also pause to observe a small group of children on the sidelines. They mimic your work, stacking small flat rocks into makeshift pyramids, their chatter a mix of delighted exclamations and impish challenges. Their efforts are clumsy yet earnest, an echo of what you once did before numbers became second nature. There's something heartening about the sight. It reaffirms that the legacy of measurement and fractions is not confined to the adult's world of solemn calculations, but dances freely among the youth, passing along wisdom in a game of playful balance. As the afternoon wanes, the overseer calls for a short break. You gather under the scant shade of a large acacia, the temperature finally dipping to a forgiving warmth. Here, you share a simple meal, a flatbread laced with a drizzle of honey and a splash of something sour from a fermented gourd. The conversation turns to the design of the pyramid, where one worker wryly suggests that the correct fraction for the perfect resting angle is, indeed, a mystery meant to remain unsolved. You laugh softly, acknowledging that some debates, like whether the gods actually prefer precise fractions or just prefer a good story, will persist long after the stones settle into place. In this moment of rest, you tie the day's work to the broader narrative of your people, a story of life built on measurements, both exact and ephemeral. With every stone heaved and set into place, you partake in a tradition that looks to the heavens for both inspiration and guidance. The fraction of effort required to lift each stone is akin to the fraction of time you spend awake, calculating your path through life. Despite the weight of the stones, your shoulders relax. There's comfort in the understanding that even the most arduous tasks have their own graceful symmetry. Before you rise to resume work, you reflect on the blend of science, art, and myth that defines this simple act of building. The pyramid, with its measured angles and carefully arranged blocks, is more than just a monument. It's a living testament to the idea that numbers, fractions, and even a few persistent uncertainties are the building blocks of order in a seemingly chaotic world. You stand and stretch, feeling the satisfaction of a task half complete, knowing that each subsequent stone, each calculated fraction, will bring the pyramid, and your day, a little closer to completion. The overseer shouts a jovial remark about the next block, and you feel that familiar mix of light-hearted humor and respectful diligence wash over you once more. You pull your worn sandals tighter, grip the stone again, and step forward on the dusty path, ready to turn another fraction of labor into a fraction of history. The sun hangs lower now, painting the sky with that warm, amber hue that signals the approach of evening, but your day's not done yet. No, now comes a task just as crucial as hauling pyramid stones or charting Venus across the sky, the market run. Specifically, you're off to help your aunt with trading at the riverside market, where corn, chilies, clay pots, and cocoa beans change hands under noisy tents and the ever-watchful eyes of hummingbirds and opportunistic lizards. You set off with a woven net bag slung over your shoulder, its contents rattling softly, dried peppers, a handful of lime, and a pouch of cacao beans. You've memorized their value by now. 1 cacao bean gets you a tamale. 3, a rabbit pelt. 10. You might be able to trade up for a decent obsidian blade, if the merchant's feeling generous or you compliment her parrot convincingly. The trail to the market weaves through maize fields and past low stone walls, some of them so ancient no one quite remembers who built them. Probably gods with too much free time, your grandfather always said. You smile at the thought. As you near the river bend, the familiar chaos of market life unfolds like a scroll being unrolled. Stalls lined with dyed textiles flap in the breeze, and the air smells of roasted pumpkin seeds, crushed garlic, fresh clay, and the faint whiff of sweaty optimism. You duck beneath a canopy of palm fronds and help your aunt lay out goods. She hands you a clay tablet etched with today's prices, a brilliant little invention that lets merchants adjust rates on the fly. One side shows numbers written in traditional .n-bar Maya notation. The other side features carved glyphs for common goods, tortillas, dried fish, smoked frogs, a delicacy, and of course, cacao. And here's where things get deliciously tricky. You're in charge of haggling. Trading, in Maya society, is math with flair. You need to calculate not only the current value of goods, but the relative value based on who's asking, how many clouds are in the sky, and whether the wind sounds a bit judgy today. A man approaches. He's eyeing your aunt's chilies with greedy affection. You know this guy, Tuxo, the sandal maker. He always tries to lowball. He points to a handful of chilies and offers 2 cacao beans. You scoff, theatrically. 2. These were dried over sacred embers, Tuxul. He raises an eyebrow. Ah, so they taste like smoke and guilt. Your aunt coughs, hiding her laughter. You counter, 6 beans. 4. 5, and we throw in the cursed gourd. Tuxul eyes the gourd, which is, in fairness, probably just ugly. But you act like it hums at night. Fine, he grumbles, and hands you 5 beans, deal struck. You enter the transaction on the counting board, a series of pebbles arranged into the base 20 system. You set down a bar, 5, beside the glyph for chili. Done. This blend of mental math, barter psychology, and theatrical nonsense is exactly why you love market day. And you're not alone. Traders from nearby towns arrive by canoe, bringing everything from obsidian tools to bizarre fruits you can't pronounce. Each merchant carries their own mental math chart, based on local prices, bartering traditions, and which gods they've annoyed lately. You pause at a nearby stall to admire a stack of woven tunics dyed in brilliant blues and reds. The merchant, a sharp-eyed woman with arms like tree roots, sees you ogling. 2 tunics for 30 beans, she says. You raise an eyebrow and do a quick conversion. You mutter, ... above bar. That's 17. You'll need a few more sales to get close. You thank her and return to your post. Historians often marvel at the intricacies of Maya marketplaces, not just for the physical goods exchanged, but for the economic logic underpinning them. Even without coinage, the Maya developed complex systems of trade value using cacao, shells, cloth, and salt as units. These exchanges weren't just transactional, they were social. Haggling was expected. Humor. Essential. Scholars still debate the true standardization of pricing across Maya cities. Was a tamale in Copan worth the same as one in Tikal? Some believe price variation was wild and whimsical. Others argue that traveling merchants helped normalize rates. But one thing everyone agrees on, the system worked. And it worked well enough for you to nab a sweet pair of sandals last week. Thank you very much. Later in the afternoon, a traveling potter sets up nearby. He's got bowls shaped like frogs, vases shaped like jaguars, and one slightly suspicious cup shaped like a foot. He claims it enhances flavor. You suspect it just weirds people out into buying it. He's also got a clever little abacus-style device made of jade beads and string. He uses it to demonstrate calculations. He can tally dozens of trade combinations with a flick of his fingers. You admire it from afar, then decide to try and build one yourself later using corn kernels and chicken sinew. By late day, the energy of the market begins to settle. People sit in the shade, trading gossip instead of goods. A musician plays a tune on a clay flute, and someone starts passing around cups of fermented maize drink, slightly sour, deeply relaxing, and absolutely not for children. You sip one anyway, because no one's watching. Probably. You look down at your net bag. It's lighter now, filled with only a few leftover chilies and a frog figurine that no one bought but you've grown attached to. You name it Kuxi, which means burps loudly. Seemed appropriate. As you and your aunt pack up, she pats your shoulder. Good math today, she says. And just like that, you feel the quiet pride of a job well done, not from lifting stones or appeasing feathered gods, but from mastering the art of value, trade, and numbers in motion. The sun kisses the treetops as you begin your walk home. Cacao beans jingle in your pouch. Your mind, meanwhile, is already tallying what you'll trade for tomorrow, a new belt, maybe. Or a carved bone comb. Or, if you're lucky, one of those frog bowls that whistles when you pour soup in. Life, like math, is full of possibilities. By the time you reach home, the sun is beginning its slow descent, casting long shadows that stretch like sleepy animals across the hard-packed ground. Your legs ache pleasantly from the day's labors, your shoulders sag beneath the weight of the net bag, and your head is buzzing, not just from the maize drink, but from numbers. Always numbers. you step through the threshold and into the cool dimness of your family's compound. A pot of beans simmers gently in a clay cauldron near the hearth. Your little sister is attempting to use maize dough to build a model pyramid. She's currently arguing with a dog over structural integrity. You drop your bag, let your muscles groan in gratitude, and collapse beside her, brushing a few kernels of corn from the dirt, but there's no rest yet. Tonight, your cousin is coming over to practice divinatory math, the ancient and totally serious art of predicting one's future using numbers, dreams, and possibly beetle behavior. You've promised to help. It's not official priest business, of course. More like teenager mischief masquerading as cosmic insight. But the math is real. Sort of. Your cousin arrives just after twilight, carrying a folded cloth filled with black beans, maize kernels, cacao shells, and 2 very overdramatic feathers. He also brings a scroll covered in hand-drawn glyphs, half of which are legitimate calendar symbols. And the other half looks suspiciously like inside jokes. Tonight, he declares, we shall learn whether I am destined for greatness, or a sore knee. You nod solemnly. Both seem likely. The ritual begins. First, he scatters the beans and kernels onto the ground. Each symbol corresponds to a number, and each number corresponds to a direction, an animal, or an element. It's a little like astrological Sudoku. You rearrange them into clusters, 5 beans to the east, 2 maize kernels to the north, 3 shells forming a jaguar's tail. You reference your cousin's scroll. According to this chart, you are ruled by the number 13, the east wind, and frogs. He gasps. That explains so much. Also, your lucky day is last Tuesday. He curses dramatically. You both laugh. While some might see this as child's play, the truth is, Maya divination practices often wove together numbers, calendar days, and ritual interpretation with astonishing complexity. Priests consulted codices and memory to decode which day signs aligned with which deities, which combinations meant fertility, which warned of disaster, and which simply indicated it was a good day to stay home and weave something. You recall a real priest once saying, numbers are spirits too. They walk beside us. You didn't quite understand it at the time, but tonight, under starlight, with beans spread before you and your cousin holding a feather like a scepter, it almost makes sense. Historians still argue whether common people practice these rituals with the same seriousness as temple elites. Some believe divination was restricted to trained priests. Others say everyone, even farmers, used the calendar to plan marriages, planting, and journeys. Here, in your home, the lines are blurred. You're not a priest. Your cousin is barely competent. But the numbers still feel real. You move into the next stage of the ritual, the dream tally. This part's more abstract. Your cousin recounts last night's dream, a pelican doing a cartwheel into a basket of maize, followed by a sudden urge to sing. Based on the dream symbols, you assign it a 7 wind rating, with a side effect of elevated frog activity. You tap a nearby stone with your finger and whisper, the gods are amused. Probably. The fire crackles nearby. Shadows flicker against the walls, creating strange patterns that shift with your laughter. The night air cools, scented with wood smoke and the faint sweetness of roasted squash. You both fall into silence for a while, watching the embers. Your cousin fiddles with a cacao shell. You think numbers are really alive? He asks, voice low. You shrug. They outlive us. He nods thoughtfully, then grins. Then I hope my number is lucky. You nudge him. Just avoid Tuesdays. Eventually, your cousin rolls up his scroll, scoops the beans into a pouch, and heads home, still muttering something about frogs and fate. You stay behind, brushing the scattered kernels into a neat pile. The house is quiet now. Your little sister has fallen asleep beside her dough pyramid. The dog is curled up beside her, tail twitching in some secret dog math dream. You sit back, spine against the wall, and let your thoughts float. You think about numbers, not as rigid, sterile things, but as living companions. You think about how the same symbol for 13 can mean both great fortune and impending chaos, depending on context. How one dream can shift an entire day's meaning. How math can be serious, playful, spiritual, or sometimes just strange, and that's part of the comfort, isn't it? The idea that something as abstract as numbers can be interpreted, debated, shaped to fit life's chaos. That even when the world feels off balance, there's a system, if only one built on beans, birds, and the occasional fart joke disguised as prophecy. You look up through the small skylight above your family's hearth. The stars are out now, scattered like white seeds across black soil. Somewhere up there, Venus is rising again, and down here, your numbers rest for the night, tangled in dreams and dog snores. You wake to the sounds of dawn, the gentle cooing of birds, the rattle of clay pots being shifted in the courtyard, and your uncle already yelling at a gourd. Classic morning, you stretch, joints crackling like firewood, and rise slowly. The floor is cool beneath your feet. The pyramid of maize dough your sister built yesterday has partially collapsed during the night. A ceremonial disaster. She's not awake yet, so you quietly fix its leaning top with a leftover tortilla, hoping to spare her feelings, and a potential tantrum of cosmic proportions. Today's task is a curious one. You're to visit the village healer, an elderly woman named Nine Hun, who has asked for help reorganizing her herbal inventory. Now, you might not think that has much to do with math, but you'd be very wrong. Nine Hun is notorious for two things: curing headaches with hot leaves applied to your earlobes, and labeling every herb with a confusing system of dots, cuts, and weird smells. She claims her system is mathematically elegant. You suspect chaos disguised as genius. You make your way down the winding trail to her hut, which sits half submerged in vines and always smells vaguely of mint, honey, and something spiky. She greets you with a grunt and waves you inside, gesturing to a series of clay jars, gourds, and baskets strewn about in a pattern that defies gravity and logic. You will help me count, sort, and relabel, she says, thrusting a handful of dried bark into your hands. This is probably anti-nausea. Or a sleep aid. Or both, if you're lucky. And so begins the most abstract counting session of your life. First, the basics. Herbs are stored by category: root, leaf, bark, flower, fungus, or mystery lump. Each is marked with a carved symbol indicating its use: healing, dreaming, warding, or, ominously, snake stuff. There are subcategories, of course. You quickly discover that each jar bears a numerical symbol: 1 dot, 2 dots, 1 bar, 3 dots over 2 bars, and so on. Turns out, she's been using base 20 all along. Sort of. A chaotic version of it, possibly invented during a fever dream. You start organizing the jars, reciting their numbers aloud, grouping by potency. This one's a 5, you mutter, setting it beside others with a single bar carved into the lid. This one's a 17, I think. Or possibly a drawing of a man fighting a bird. She leans over your shoulder and squints. That one cures mild confusion. Don't touch it too much. As you work, IX Hun launches into one of her stories, about how she once counted exactly 400 ants entering her hut in a single line. She insists that meant the gods were testing her patience. You ask what she did about it. I relocated the hut. Of course she did. You find yourself slipping into a rhythm again. Not the orderly rhythm of codices or market math, but a wild, organic rhythm, counting by scent, by texture, by instinct. There's a jar of dried blossoms that makes you sneeze violently every time you open it. Nine Hun calls it the truth flower. She says it reveals hidden emotions. You suspect it just makes people cry from allergies and blame it on feelings. You label it 17. Flower. Uncontrollable weeping, mild. Historians still debate whether Maya healers and herbalists developed systems as intricate as priests or mathematicians. Some records suggest yes, codices detail dosages, lunar timing, and ingredient pairings. Others claim medicine was more intuitive, more trial and error. You lean toward the latter, especially when 9 Hun hands you a jar labeled with a turtle glyph and says, "This one helps you dream of corn." You pause. What if I already dream of corn? Then it helps you dream of better corn. Scientific precision, indeed. After a while, you step outside for a breath of air. The garden behind her hut is a small jungle of scents and colors, purple vines climbing wooden lattices, fat waxy leaves drooping over tiny carved idols, bees dancing in spirals near the marigolds. There's an order to it, even if it's not the kind you'd find in a codex. Rows don't line up, but certain plants always grow near each other. Ix Hun tells you it's about balance, hot herbs beside cool ones, bitter beside sweet. She even insists the garden responds better when she sings in numbers. 335, pause. 24. 1. You try it. The marigold shudders in the breeze. Coincidence? You're not so sure. Back inside. You continue cataloging. One particularly pungent jar contains something that might once have been a mushroom. It's now philosophical. You label it 0. Unknown use. Possibly already used. 9 Hun laughs. 0 is important, she says. You must name the absence, too. She's right. Just as your people use a shell glyph to represent 0 in calendars and codices, here in this hut of smells and stings, you must count what isn't there as carefully as what is. A jar without contents still has meaning. An herb used up still leaves its ghost behind. The sun climbs toward noon, the air growing thick and still. 9 Hun brews you a tea from a pinch of leaves and a dash of don't ask. You sip it. It tastes like burnt grass and makes your ears feel taller. But you do feel oddly relaxed. She pats your hand. You've done good work. Not everyone sees the numbers in leaves. You smile. They're hiding, but I see them now. You finish the last few jars, carefully placing them into groups, 10s, 5s, odd mixtures. The shelf now reads like a paragraph in glyphs: flowers for sleep, bark for fever, roots for questions best left unanswered. Before you leave, 9 Hun hands you a satchel of dried petals. Use them when you want to think clearly, she says. What are they? She winks. Could be memory. Could be itch relief. Either way, you'll remember not to scratch. As you walk home, the satchel swings at your side, each step a beat, each herb inside whispering its own quiet arithmetic. You feel grounded, as if numbers are no longer just carved in stone or counted in cacao beans, but carried in your very breath, your steps, your bones. You reach home just as the sun begins its slow farewell, brushing the treetops with soft bronze. Your sister is back to sculpting maze pyramids and humming to herself. Your uncle is now yelling at a chicken instead of a gourd. Progress, but tonight's adventure isn't within your home. No, you've been invited, perhaps volunteered is more accurate, to assist with one of the village's trickiest rituals, planning a naming ceremony. Not for a person, but for a canoe, yes. A canoe. You arrive at the ceremonial hut near the riverside, where the woodworker has laid out the freshly carved vessel. It gleams with new lacquer, painted with swirling water symbols and crowned by a carved jaguar head at the bow. It must be named according to the calendar, the elder explains solemnly, and matched with its proper day, number, animal spirit, and social mood. You squint. Social mood? He nods. Like. If the gods feel like partying. Or sulking. Of course, this is where you come in. Your job. To use that soak in, the 260-day sacred calendar, to select a naming day that won't doom the canoe to endless leaks, capsizing, or arguments with fish. You sit cross-legged by the fire, pulling out a counting mat and your bead strings. The soak-in cycle is made of 20 named days and 13 numbers, forming a loop that creates unique combinations like 4 wind, 9 jaguar, or 1 frog who's over it. Tonight's date. You discover, is 7 can, associated with maize, abundance, and ambitious dreams. The elder frowns. Ambitious dreams sink canoes. Right. You keep going, the next few dates don't look promising either. 10 Death is clearly out. 3 Storm seems risky. 8 Dog gets a curious look, but someone mutters that dogs hate water. Finally, you land on 1 AK ball. It means night, associated with intuition, rest, and journeys that begin quietly. There's a general murmur of approval. Night journeys, someone says, don't attract crocodiles. Historians still argue whether these day sign associations had real influence over daily decisions or were mostly ceremonial. But here, among the villagers, the mood is clear: a bad calendar match is tempting fate. You'd no sooner name a canoe 13 Fire than you'd ask a jaguar to babysit your children. Next, you help determine the canoe's spirit animal, based on the lunar position and a few dream signs offered by the woodworker. He claims he dreamed of a crab trying to sell him sandals. Crabs, it turns out, are rare but acceptable boat spirits, defensive, stubborn, and excellent with sideways motion. Now comes the math: the number of paddlers, 5, the number of river bends between here and the next town, 14. And the woodworker's birthday, 6 Monkey. You sketch the numbers on a strip of bark paper, overlay them with the current lunar phase glyph, and, after some mental gymnastics, you produce a final reading: name, Shadow Crab. Date of dedication, 1 AK ball. Mood, cautiously optimistic. There's a pause. Someone coughs. Then the woodworker claps you on the shoulder, beaming. That, he says, is the kind of name that won't get us attacked by river spirits. The whole group lets out a collective sigh of relief. As the night deepens, the ceremony begins. Incense swirls. Offerings of cocoa, flowers, and a single frog are placed inside the canoe. A chant begins, low and steady, echoing off the river stones. The canoe's jaguar head gleams in the firelight, looking vaguely pleased with itself. You sit back, fingers smudged with charcoal, watching the fire dance across the ceremonial glyphs. The stars shimmer overhead. You spot Venus again, rising above the treetops. Someone hands you a cup of warm tamarind drink. You sip it slowly, the tangy sweetness grounding you. The canoe, Shadow Crab, will set sail at dawn. You won't be on it, but your math, your name, your numbers, they'll ride the river in your place, and that's the thing, isn't it? Even when you're not physically present, your calculations are. They steer the journey, shape the outcome, and keep paddlers afloat. The numbers become part of the canoe's memory, woven into every creak of wood and splash of oar. You think back to the healer's jars, the marketplace trades, the pyramid fractions, the dreams decoded with cacao shells. Every one of those moments relied on the same thing: a belief that numbers carry weight, not just in value, but in meaning. Historians may continue to debate whether calendar divinations were practical tools or theatrical rituals. But you've seen them work. You felt them work. You lie back in the grass near the river, listening to the chanting fade into the gentle lap of water against stone. You count each wave, each breath, each heartbeat like a sacred measure. The canoe will float. The numbers will hold, and tonight, in the quiet hush of jungle nightfall, even the stars seem to agree. You wake to the soft hush of early morning, just as the first sliver of golden light slips through the jungle canopy. Somewhere in the distance, a conch shell sounds, the ceremonial departure of Shadow Crab. You smile into your woven blanket, half dreaming of sideways paddling crabs and stubbornly optimistic boats, but the day has other plans for you. Today, you're to help your uncle prepare offerings for an upcoming harvest festival, one that's aligned with both the solar and sacred calendars. That means math, obviously. But this time, it's a more poetic form: calendar coordination, food portioning, and counting blessings. Literally, the ritual isn't until tomorrow, but preparations begin now. Your uncle greets you with a stack of bark paper lists and a bundle of dried corn tassels. He's already calculating how many tamales can be made with a single basket of maize. His current estimate is not enough, which he states dramatically while wiping sweat from his brow. Begin with the days, he instructs, pointing to a large carved stone well near the courtyard. We need to align the food prep with both the Hob and the Tsokin calendars. You nod, of course, as if anyone in their right mind fully understands how those two interlocking systems function in practice. The Hob, the solar calendar, has 365 days. The Tsokin, sacred and cyclical, only 260. They align every 52 years like two celestial turtles high-fiving. But your job isn't to track the great calendar round, it's to figure out if you can fit 120 tamales and 6 ceremonial drinks into a day with only 12 daylight hours. Step 1, you sort ingredients. Maize, obviously. Squash. Beans. Chili. Avocado leaves. The chili has to be exactly 3 parts for every 5 parts bean, otherwise the gods get heartburn. Your uncle claims this is not metaphorical. Step 2, you arrange the cooking order. Not by recipe, but by numerology. Today is 4EB, which is associated with the road, motion, and sometimes, digestion. That means root vegetables go first, then grains, then legumes. Why? No one knows. But tradition says that if you cook in the wrong sequence, your festival stew may attract wandering spirits with terrible table manners. You carve glyphs into the side of the cooking pots, denoting which item will be used for which hour. Some of the pots are cracked, and your uncle jokes that one of them has cooked more meals than most kings. You believe it, it smells like memory and old stories. By mid-morning, you're elbow deep in masa dough. Counting out fistfuls into round bundles. You whisper numbers as you go, organizing them into groups of 20, then wrapping them in banana leaves with satisfying little folds. Every fourth one gets a mark, a pinch of spice or a different knot. Your uncle explains that the marked ones are for elders. Or picky cousins. Or hungry spirits who get cranky when they're served identical food. While you work, he tells you about a time the festival offerings were miscounted, and someone ended up giving 19 instead of 20 tamales to the ancestor shrine. The rains came late that year, and the village blamed the missing tamale. Historians still argue whether it was drought, he mutters, or divine hunger. Once the tamales are shaped and steaming, you turn to the drinks, cacao, mixed with chili and maize froth. Each cup must be poured in a specific order, representing the 4 cardinal directions. You mark each gourd cup with red, black, white, and yellow threads, then practice reciting the order aloud. Your cousin arrives mid-task and tries to swap the yellow and black threads for fun. You slap his hand and inform him, gravely, that if he does it again, the gods might make his next tooth grow in sideways. He retreats, muttering something about your dramatic math aura. You laugh, but deep down, you do feel it, how even this casual food prep has structure, balance, rules. It's math disguised as cooking, storytelling disguised as measuring. Later, your grandmother arrives to check your work. She's tiny and terrifying. She peers at the tamales, nods at your thread-wrapped cups, and raises one eyebrow at a slightly overstuffed avocado leaf wrap. That one's for the god of indulgence, she says dryly. You love her. She sits and begins the process of oral tallying, a rhythmic chant used to count offerings without losing track. One for the wind, one for the rain, one for the spirit who likes sweets but hates beans, she recites. It's mesmerizing. You find yourself nodding in time. Slipping into the chant's cadence as though it were a lullaby made of maize and memories. The chant includes offerings that no longer exist: jaguar tooth stew, golden sap from extinct trees, a mythical fruit shaped like a curled toe. You suspect these were invented for dramatic flair, but the numbers remain. 17 of this, 3 of that, 9 of something we wish we still had. Even in this poetic mode, numbers anchor everything. They're woven into stories, encoded in traditions, braided into chants. Historians believe that much of Maya mathematics lived in these rituals, less in abstract scribbles, more in food, song, and sequence. Some even suggest that women, often overlooked in ancient math history, may have been the true keepers of these ceremonial counts. You think of your grandmother's chant and suspect those historians are absolutely right. As the sun leans westward, you and your uncle step back to admire the offerings. Tamales in neat rows. Cups aligned by color. Pots steaming. And behind it all, numbers. Invisible, but vital. You find comfort in the structure. Every part of the offering has been measured, timed, and counted. Tomorrow, the festival will happen. The village will dance, feast, and speak the old prayers. And thanks to your work today, no god will go hungry. Probably, you wash your hands in a basin of cool water scented with lime leaves, then sit beside the fire, watching the steam drift upward like soft exclamations of a language older than even your calendar. The numbers are cooked. The math is done, for now. The morning of the harvest festival dawns slow and golden, with the kind of mist that clings to the treetops like a shy guest deciding whether to stay. Roosters call, frogs murmur from last night's damp corners, and your village begins to wake, not with a shout, but a rustle. You rise early, but not too early. It's a festival, after all. And while there's still much to do, there's also joy in pacing yourself, like letting a long math problem unfold one symbol at a time. The plaza is already humming with low, purposeful movement. Families arrive, carrying baskets wrapped in cloth, children dragging carved wooden animals behind them. The air smells of tamale steam, copal incense. And a hint of nervous excitement, as if even the gods might be wondering whether the math checks out. You're greeted with nods and claps on the back as you join the preparation area. The festival priest, wrapped in a robe stitched with tiny jade discs, gestures for you to help with the ceremonial patterning of the offerings, an ancient layout of food, flowers, and small carved glyph stones arranged according to the 4 cardinal directions and the number 13. The mat is unrolled in the center of the plaza. It's woven with bands of red, black, yellow, and white, each symbolizing east, west, north, and south. On top of it, you begin placing the tamales and bowls, exactly as rehearsed. 1 item for each day number in the Tsokin cycle, 1 through 13, arranged in spirals that mimic the star paths. It's beautiful, strange, and deeply mathematical. A neighbor whispers that her uncle once placed a 14th item on the mat. He didn't blink for 2 days afterward, she claims. Just stared at the sun and recited chicken recipes. You nod solemnly and make very sure you stop at 13. The high priest approaches. He carries the Qilin book, a folded codex used to track celestial positions and past festival layouts. It's old, its pages delicate, ink fading in places. He points to a pattern recorded from 7 festivals ago. The layout was done in a double spiral, 2 snakes coiled around a jade disc. This year, he says, we try the maize blossom formation. It's safer. Less slithery. You help adjust the items. Everything has a place, and every place has a number. Offerings are measured in not just quantity, but intention. Each food item, each cup, each bundle of flowers represents not only nourishment but a balance of elements, hot and cool, dry and moist, sweet and bitter. There's even a tiny carved turtle placed at the very center of the mat. Why the turtle? You ask. Because turtles know patience, the priest answers. And this mat is a slow feast for the gods. As people begin to arrive in greater numbers, music rises. Drums, flutes, shell rattles, rhythms based on 5-beat and 13-beat patterns, echoing the very cycles of your calendar system. You start tapping your fingers in time, realizing how deeply numbers are stitched into the festival, hidden in rhythm, movement, even the ceremonial dances. Your uncle gives a speech. He's not a priest or a noble, but as the one who helped coordinate the offerings, he gets to say a few words. He thanks the gods for maize, water, family, and, for reasons you suspect are personal, an especially good chili harvest. There's polite applause, and someone nearby mutters, "Don't forget frogs." You're not sure if they mean as offerings or blessings. The first round of tamales is distributed. You help hand them out, carefully following the list, elders first, then guests from nearby villages, then children, and finally everyone else. Every group receives a number of items that adds up to a multiple of 13, which delights the priest to no end. See? He says, gesturing at your careful portioning. Even meals are calendars. As the sun reaches its peak, you watch the ceremony shift into something both celebratory and cosmic. People eat, laugh, drink, and whisper wishes into flower bundles, placing them by the central turtle. Some people dance in pairs, others in slow circles, feet tracing spiral paths in the dust. Historians have often wondered how much of Maya ritual life was grounded in calculation versus improvisation. Some argue that festivals followed strict formulas. Others say local variations made each event unique. Today, you see both, the math beneath the joy, the structure beneath the movement. You sneak away for a moment. Sitting beneath a carved stone stele just outside the plaza. It shows an ancient ruler holding a bundle of maize and a stylus. Beneath him are glyphs denoting a date from centuries past, one that aligns eerily with today's cycle. You realize, as you count the dots and bars, that this very date once hosted a harvest celebration just like yours, same day sign. Same offering pattern. Same turtle, probably. A mathematical echo across time. The idea gives you goosebumps. Back in the plaza, children begin playing a game where they throw marked beans into numbered bowls, trying to make combinations that add to 20. It's essentially spiritual beanbag toss. One kid hits the 5, the 7, and the 8 in a row. That's 20. She shouts. I win a frog cup. She does not, in fact, win a frog cup. But she does get a smile from the elder keeping score, who tells her, that combination means luck for your next 3 days. She beams. The gods, it seems, are feeling generous. As afternoon deepens, the music slows, shadows lengthen, and people begin to gather their baskets and families. The turtle remains on the mat, now surrounded by wilted flowers and happy crumbs. You help roll up the mat, collect the empty cups, and carry the leftovers, very few, a good omen, to the back courtyard. The priest claps your shoulder. You counted well, he says. The gods noticed. You're tired, but in that satisfying, bone-deep way that follows good work. You look around at the math hidden in everything, the rows of cups, the beats of the drums, the spirals and the dust, and you feel it all settle into your bones like warm tamale steam. Another cycle honored. Another story written in numbers, and tomorrow? Tomorrow begins the counting again. The day after the festival feels like the quiet hum that follows a long, deep exhale. The plaza is empty, save for a few chickens reclaiming their territory. Stray petals flutter down from rooftops. Somewhere, a flute plays lazily, not for ritual this time, but just because someone feels like it. You, on the other hand, are on your way to the scribe's hut. He asked for your help copying some calendrical tables onto fresh bark paper. You've always admired the scribes, those keepers of glyphs and whispers, of centuries preserved in curling ink and careful dots. You once heard someone describe them as math poets with very sore necks. That sounds about right. The scribe's hut smells like ink and moss. It's dim, filled with stacked codices, brushes carved from bird bones, and an owl who occasionally judges your posture. The scribe, an elderly man named Chuck Mewen, greets you with a wave of his ink-stained hand. Sit, he says. Today, we write the sky. No pressure, you're copying a long count date series, a way of marking time that stretches back thousands of years. It's not like the Tsokin or the Hob. It's linear, mathematical, eternal. It tracks the number of days since a mythical creation date, August 11th, 3114 BCE, if you want the modern calendar equivalent. Which you don't. You're perfectly happy living in a world where time is told by turtles, maize, and multiplying dots. The long count is composed of 5 numbers, each representing a unit of time: Bacton, 144,000 days, Khatun, 7,200, Tun, 360, Weinel, 20, and Kn, 1. You draw the glyphs slowly, carefully, shells for 0, bars for 5s, dots for 1s. Today's date is 9.16.2.0.0, which means. You pause. Exactly 1,376,000 days have passed since creation. Chuck Mewen nods as you calculate. And yet here we are, he murmurs, still figuring out how many tamales to serve on the third moon. You copy several more dates. Each one marks something specific, an eclipse, a birth, a dedication of a temple. The events are long gone, but the numbers remain, like footprints carved into stone. The math doesn't forget. One glyph catches your attention, it's a rare combination, 9.15.10.0.0. Next to it, a jaguar carved in mid-pounce. What happened here? You ask, the scribe smiles faintly. Historians still argue about that. Some say it marked a great hunt. Others believe it was the day a king claimed he swallowed a star. He leans in. My bet? Someone exaggerated. But the math holds up, even if the story bends. He hands you a fresh strip of bark paper. Try composing your own date series. He says. Use yesterday. Use what you remember. You do the math slowly. Yesterday's festival lands on 9.16.1.19.0, you write the glyphs carefully. Bacton, 9 bars. Khatun, 16 dots. Then the rest. Below the glyphs, you add a drawing of the turtle, surrounded by petals and steaming tamales. No one will know the specifics 100 years from now, but they'll see the glyphs and know something joyful happened. As you finish, Chuck Muin begins reading aloud from one of the older codices. It's a poetic description of the heavens, a list of star groupings and the animals they resemble. That one's the fire serpent, he says, pointing at a string of dots. That one is the drunken bat. Not a flattering constellation. You grin. Do they ever change? He shrugs. Stars? No. Interpretations? All the time. You realize then that even the math of the sky is subject to imagination. The same pattern of stars might be a crocodile one century, a canoe the next. But the dates marking when those interpretations changed, that's where the numbers step in. They anchor the story. You spend the afternoon learning to use the correlation table, a reference grid that helps scribes align soak-in dates with long count numbers and astronomical events. It's mind-bendingly complex. You feel like you're peeking through a curtain into the gears of the universe. Somewhere amid the calculations, you realize just how profound the Maya concept of time really is. It's not just cyclical or linear. It's layered, each day holds multiple identities. It exists as a number in the long count, as a combination of name and number in the Tzolk'in, as a solar position in the Hab. One day is like a person with multiple names, the formal title, the nickname, the embarrassing one your cousins call you. As the sun lowers, Chuck Muin shows you the calendar round date that will occur exactly 52 years from now, the next time all 3 calendars will align. You'll be older than I am now, he says. And if you're lucky, still counting. You finish your work as dusk falls, eyes a little blurry from squinting at glyphs. The owl hoots. The ink pot is nearly dry. The scribe pats your shoulder. You did well. The numbers didn't confuse you too much. You smile. Only a medium amount. As you step outside, you look up. The stars are just beginning to show. You find the drunken bat and raise your eyebrows at it. It blinks indifferently. You walk home slowly, feeling the rhythm of time in your footsteps. The numbers follow you, softly, like shadows. Not cold, not rigid. But familiar. Woven into tamales, calendars, turtle-shaped centerpieces, and festival chants, you think, maybe time isn't just something that passes, maybe it's something you carry. The next morning, you find yourself summoned to a new kind of classroom, if you can call a carved stone bench beneath a kapok tree a classroom. But make no mistake, today's lesson is serious. You're learning about tribute math, that's right. Taxation, not the fun kind with bean counters and jokes about tax write-offs for Jaguar stables, though you will try that joke later. This is the deeply practical, occasionally terrifying math of how much your village owes to the regional capital. Your teacher today is a no-nonsense woman named Nine Yol. She is the tribute keeper, a living ledger who can calculate the worth of a bundle of cacao beans by weight, aroma, and dramatic squint alone. She's also your grandmother's oldest friend, which means you're not allowed to make mistakes, fidget, or breathe too loud. She begins with a sigh. The capital wants 80 cacao bundles, 30 cotton cloaks, 6 obsidian blades, and 1 parrot that can insult people in 2 languages. You think she's joking about the parrot. You hope she's joking about the parrot. Each item has a tribute value assigned, essentially, a unit of exchange. Cacao beans are standard. A cotton cloak is worth 400 beans. An obsidian blade, depending on the sharpness and dramatic flair, is around 800. The parrot? Unquantifiable. That's where the bartering charm comes in, she says, eyeing you. You sit down beside her stack of counting sticks, quills, and ledgers written in bark paper. Let's start with the cacao, she says. How many beans do we need if we want to pay for the blades with extra cacao instead? You do the math. 6 blades, at 800 beans each, is 4,800 beans. Add that to the original 80 bundles, which are 100 beans each, and you're up to 12,800 beans. 9 Yol nods. Good. Now round up, because the collectors always ask for a little more. Superstition or greed? Historians still argue. You begin organizing the bundles. They're wrapped in woven leaves, each marked with a different symbol: turtle for standard, serpent for spicy, yes, flavored cacao, and frog for cursed. The cursed ones are set aside. We don't give the capital cursed beans, she mutters. They'll just send them back with interest. Next up, cloaks. Cotton weaving is considered a major art form, but also an accounting headache. Each cloak takes 2 full moon cycles to weave and is priced based on the complexity of the pattern. The tribute request specifies standard patterning, no jaguars riding snakes, no hidden glyphs of rebellion. You do the conversion. 30 cloaks x 400 beans equals 12,000 more cacao beans. Your mental tally now stands at 24,800 beans if the village paid everything in cacao. Which they won't, but still, you write it out. Your fingers are dusty, your mind is buzzing, and you've developed a deep sympathy for anyone whose job is to calculate how many frogs equal 1 spear. You ask why the capital demands tribute in different forms if everything has a cacao value. Because value isn't just math, Ixyol says. It's performance. Gifts say, we care. Cacao alone says, we're rich, but lazy, so the obsidian blades stay. As for the parrot, she leads you to the edge of the plaza where a wiry green bird sits in a hanging cage, muttering what sounds like slurred poetry. Say hello, she instructs. The parrot blinks. Your feathers are boring. You blink back. Can we include this as a bonus? She nods. Or as a threat? You both laugh. A rare moment of levity in the otherwise precise and stressful world of tribute math. As the day goes on, you're tasked with inscribing the final inventory onto a large tribute tablet, an official record for the collectors. You draw each glyph carefully: cacao bundles, cloaks, blades, and a stylized bird with what you hope is the universal glyph for "Don't take this personally." Each item is listed in triplicate, 1 for the village, 1 for the collector, and 1 for the gods. The gods don't actually need receipts, but it's tradition. And possibly protection. Historians still debate whether the tribute system was more about political control or genuine economic exchange. What's clear to you now is that it's also about communication, how math becomes a language for survival, negotiation, and, occasionally, sarcasm. You finish the ledger as the sun begins to lower behind the trees. 9 Yol pats your shoulder and nods with approval so small and quiet it feels like winning a prize. You counted clean, she says. You'll make a good tribute speaker one day. Or a sarcastic parrot trainer. You thank her, your mind full of numbers, trade logic, and a sudden, irrational urge to calculate how many insults equal a cloak. As you leave, you pass the parrot one more time. Nice counting, bean brain. It squawks. You smile. The tribute is ready, the village won't go hungry. The math has spoken, and maybe, just maybe, you're starting to like the way numbers carry not just weight, but personality. You wake with a sore back and a deeper understanding of cacao-based diplomacy. But there's no time to rest. Today, you've been invited to one of the most intriguing, tightly kept domains in the village, the astronomer's platform. You're not entirely sure what qualifies you for this honor. Maybe your tribute math impressed someone. Maybe the gods of the stars are just in a good mood. Or maybe, as your cousin whispered with wide eyes, you're just short enough to fit in the observation hatch. You climb the narrow stone steps to a small chamber perched above the treetops. The astronomer, an intense man named Toon Pekel, greets you with a nod and offers you a seat next to a polished stone circle inscribed with concentric calendar rings. He doesn't smile. He does, however, offer you a roasted grasshopper snack. Eat, he says. Today we chase Venus. You don't ask questions. The Maya were meticulous stargazers. Not just casual pretty stars types, but calendar carving, planet tracking, eclipse predicting mathematicians with a deep reverence for the sky's rhythms. Venus, in particular, was an obsession. The planet cycle, 263 days of visibility followed by 50 days in the underworld, i.e., hidden behind the sun, was tracked so precisely that its movements were inscribed into codices centuries before telescopes existed. Toon Pekel places a codex in your lap. It's delicate and terrifying. You pretend not to sweat on it. We're nearing the end of Venus's morning star cycle, he explains, pointing at a series of red glyphs. She'll vanish in 2 days. Then darkness. You try to nod in a way that says, ah yes, classic Venus, while your brain is frantically recalculating what day it is. He hands you a bundle of knotted cords, a sky ledger. Each knot represents a star event. Some knots are tight, others loose. A few are dyed with crushed cochineal for special warnings. He shows you how to run your fingers along the cord while observing the horizon at dawn. When Venus disappears, you're supposed to record the last glimmer knot. This part, he says, relies on intuition. You look at the horizon. It's hazy. Your intuition says clouds. As you settle into the observation posture, squatting uncomfortably with one eye in a carved sightline groove, you realize something. This is math of the most mystical kind. It's not just measuring, it's anticipating. Every angle, every star path, every light point in the sky tells a story that hasn't yet happened, and yet, the numbers match. They always do. Historians still argue whether Maya astronomers truly believed Venus was a god with moods or simply used divine metaphors to explain orbital mechanics. But as you chart its fade from the sky, it's easy to see how one could become the other. The math and the myth blend here, like breath and mist. Toon Pekel shows you how the eclipse table works next. It's a jagged set of dots and bars inscribed on a limestone slab. Every 177 or so days, the sun and moon align just right to cause an eclipse. When you see this glyph, he says, pointing to a stylized open mouth, the sky is about to eat itself. You love that. Together, you calculate the next possible solar event. If today is 9.16.2.3.0, and the last eclipse was 177 days ago, then the next should be. You do the counting on a cord loop, careful not to skip knots. 9.16.2.10.17, you whisper. He raises his eyebrows. Correct. You feel like you just summoned lightning using algebra. Then comes the sundial shadow alignment. This is more geometry than astronomy, but here, the two are siblings. A thin, upright pole in the center of the platform casts a shadow that moves across etched marks on the floor. By measuring the angle and shadow length at midday, you help estimate how many days remain before the solstice. The answer, 12, which, Toon Pekel says, is the number of corn gods in the underworld. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe not. You take a break beneath the shade canopy, sipping at a tamarind drink laced with mint while the sun climbs. The view from the platform stretches beyond the jungle, hills roll in the distance, rivers thread through green like silver snakes. You imagine what it must have felt like centuries ago, staring at this same horizon, knowing your math could predict the sky's next move. Tuun Peko leans in. Do you want to try charting a constellation? You nearly drop your drink. He hands you a slate board and gestures toward the northeastern sky. That patch there. Make your own. Give it a name. Justify it mathematically. You blink. All right. You trace out 5 bright stars. One is brighter than the others, Venus, probably. You connect them in a bent shape, kind of like a bird mid-flap. It's a duck, you say. He nods. A fast duck. You grin. A duck with secrets. He nods again, deeply serious. The duck of deceit. A seasonal warning. When it rises, traders lie about their prices. You realize this is a game every astronomer plays, making the sky feel human. Turning math into myth, and myth into guidepost. As the sun begins to fall, Venus becomes visible again, just barely, a wink from the horizon. You mark the glimmer not with a tiny red thread. The astronomer nods. The cycle is nearly complete. The gods are watching. The math has spoken, and in the sky above, the duck of deceit flaps one invisible wing. It's your final morning of learning, though, let's be honest, the Maya would say no cycle truly ends. But still, today feels special. You've worked with healers, market traders, canoe namers, tribute keepers, sky readers. And now, as if saving the most mysterious for last, you're summoned to the home of a dream interpreter. Her name is Nine Nikti. She's not old, exactly, but timeless. She wears a woven tunic embroidered with glyphs you don't recognize, and when you enter her home, the first thing you notice is the smell: sweet copal smoke, crushed cacao, and something faintly minty, like crushed herbs from the mountains. She greets you with a small nod and places a dried beetle on your hand. Don't ask, she says. Just thank it. You thank the beetle. Ex Nikti explains that today's lesson is about symbolic numbers in dreams, not just what you see while sleeping, but what your mind sees through math, patterns, and metaphor. The Maya believed dreams were a mirror of reality filtered through the sacred calendar. Numbers, in dreams, aren't just data, they're messages. You sit on a reed mat as she lays out small carved stones across a woven cloth. Each stone has a glyph etched into it. Some represent days, others gods, others abstract concepts like opportunity or itchy ancestors. Beside the stones, she places a bundle of cacao pods and an empty gourd bowl. You'll read a dream today. She says. Not yours. A stranger's. She opens a folded strip of bark paper. A dream is written out in glyphic shorthand: a snake, the number 7, a broken house, a rabbit with one ear, and the glyph for wind. This came last night. It was recorded before dawn, she murmurs. Let's interpret. You begin with the number 7, sacred. Represents challenge, transformation, even resistance. Not always bad, but never neutral. A tricky number. The snake is often a symbol of change, rebirth, or hidden knowledge. The broken house might suggest disruption, exile, or an abandoned place of memory. The rabbit with one ear is peculiar. Nine Nikti laughs. Historians still argue whether that glyph meant mischief or just a very unfortunate rabbit. The final symbol, wind, can imply motion, messages, or divine breath. You begin piecing the symbols together, using what you've learned from calendar math and mythic cycles. A 7 snake might correspond to the day sign Chikshan, a potent sign linked to the serpent of life. Combine that with wind and a broken house, and perhaps the message is about leaving one place to find clarity in another. Not escape, just evolution. Not bad, she says. Most people get distracted by the earless rabbit. You press further, trying to match the glyphs to current calendar cycles. If the dream was recorded on 4 and the day it was dreamt was also ruled by the number 4, then the number 7 in the dream may be counterbalancing, hinting at what is to come 3 days ahead. You consult her dream wheel, a circular diagram with the 20-day signs and their symbolic meanings, and trace ahead. In 3 days, it will be 7 Lammat, the day of Venus, love, and endings that feel like beginnings. You offer this insight, she smiles. The dreamer may be deciding whether to leave a role, a home, or an identity. The math says, yes. Gently, but yes. You exhale. It's strange work, this. Less precise than astronomy, less tangible than tribute math. But it's still deeply mathematical, in a poetic kind of way. The numbers aren't just quantities, they're archetypes. Personalities. And in dreams, they whisper rather than shout. Next, 9 Nikti hands you a small mirror made of polished obsidian. Now, you dream. You raise an eyebrow, not sleep. Just close your eyes, and count back from 13, imagining a glyph with each breath. So you do, 13, jaguar, 12, cornstalk, 11, rain, 10. You feel your mind softening, a rhythm forming, not unlike the chant of the healer, or the bean math of the marketplace. The glyphs float behind your eyelids like old friends. When you open your eyes, she's looking at you, well. She asks, you blink. I saw. A hand reaching into a pot of ink. A spiral. And a turtle spinning on its back. She grins. Very auspicious. That's the glyph for curiosity. She pauses. And possible indigestion. You both laugh. As you stand to leave, she gives you a parting gift, a small cord bracelet woven with 13 knots, each dyed a different color, for counting your days, she says. But not just counting forward, counting backward, too. So you never forget how far you've come. The idea sticks with you as you descend the hill, the jungle air thick and rich with sounds and memory. You've learned numbers used in trade, in naming, in healing, in festival offering, in astronomy, and now, in dreams. Each type of math told a different kind of story, some were loud, others whispered. But all were alive, even now, as twilight falls and the evening stars blink on, you catch yourself counting, 13 knots, for tamales left from lunch, 2 days until Venus vanishes, 1 parrot still calling you names. You sit on a stone near the river and watch your reflection ripple in the water. The journey isn't over, but it's paused, for now, time, like a circle, will bring you back again. And now, as the final embers of the fire flicker low and the sky slips fully into night, let's ease our minds into stillness. The numbers fade, gently. No longer loud, no longer urgent. Just soft reminders stitched into the stars, the soil, the soft rustling of leaves outside your home. You stretch out on your mat, the coolness of evening wrapping around you like a well-woven blanket. Maybe you can still smell the faintest trace of cacao, or hear the sleepy grumble of a distant parrot settling into its dreams. All around you, the village is quiet. The marketplace is still. The astronomer's platform sits in shadow. The tribute math is folded away in its bark paper scrolls. Even the calendar wheels have slowed, not because time has stopped, but because you are part of it now, woven in, perfectly counted. You breathe in, and out, the kind of breath that takes you deeper than sleep. The kind of breath that lets you drift between numbers and stories, cycles and silence, nothing to solve. Nothing to calculate. No beans to count. Just you, and the soft rhythm of a world that knew how to dream in glyphs. So rest, now, the tamales are wrapped. The stars are aligned. The turtle waits at the center of the spiral, still spinning, and you're exactly where you need to be. Good night.